Today we're going to take a look at adding a field to Cherwell to track initial ownership of a ticket. Now, some organizations, instead of giving tasks out to technicians to help with the resolution of a ticket, may actually switch ownership. So the initial ticket is logged by someone and then they change the owner to another person and perhaps another and another and another, instead of keeping the ownership with the person who initially logged it throughout its whole life cycle. So if you do switch ownership, you're going to lose track of who initially had that ticket. Now, of course, you could create a journal entry that would log these, log each change of owner, but then you have to sift through all those journals to see if you can track the progression of the owners of the ticket. So there is a little easier way to do that. We can add a couple fields to accomplish what we'd want to get that data out of the system afterwards. So I'm going to go into my admin tool and open up a new blueprint. Go to my incident object, and I'm going to edit my BizOb. I've added a couple fields, and as you recall, when you add fields to Cherwell, the latest ones get added at the bottom. So I've added one called Initial Owner, and I've added another one called Ownership Tracker. So the first one, Initial Owner, that's a single field, so if you really only wanted to track that initial owner, and then after that you didn't necessarily care. But if you wanted to kind of have a progression of the owners who owned that ticket, we could write their names to this ownership tracker field and append each time the owner changes, and then you could go back and parse that data out. So let's take a look at the first one. It's just a field called Initial Owner, and I've built a couple of incident actions. So if I go up to Business Object, Incident Action, Automatic Actions, I've created two automatic actions here. So the first one, called Track Initial Owner, all that does, if I edit that one step, go to my one-step manager, edit the one step, all it does is update the business object. It's going to update this incident, and it's going to fill that initial owner field with the owned by data. And then it saves the record. So it's going to run, it's going to take whosever name is in the owned by field, and it's going to write it to that initial owner field. Now this is assuming that you have the owned by field required upon save. If you don't, somebody could save that ticket. Cherwell's going to do his first save, and there'll be no data in that field to write to this field. So you'd have to have owned by be required, and then upon first save, this action would run, take that data, and write it to that initial owner field, and then you've got that data moving forward if you wanted to report on who the initial owner was of a ticket, regardless of how many times it got switched around to other people. Now the second action, I'd run either one of these, I wouldn't have them both, is called Track Ownership. Now this is going to run on first save and any additional saves, but it's also looking at the owned by field. So it's saying only run this if the owned by field is not empty. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have owned by be required on first save. But as soon as they put that first owner in there, this would run, capture that data. It would run this one step called Track Ownership. Let me edit that. One Step Manager. Let's edit the one step and take a look at the field. So he's going to fill the Track Ownership field with whatever data is in the owned by field. He'll put a semicolon after it, and then he's going to append it if there's any other data in there. So each time the owner changes, it's going to take that name, write it into this field with a semicolon, and append it after whatever data's in there. So if I changed ownership 3 times, there would be an owned by name, semicolon, owned by name, semicolon, owned by name. It would put those in 3 times, and then I could go back in and report on that data later. So let me cancel out of here. So again, the owned by has to be filled, and then this would fire, and it'll take that owner and write it into that field. So that way, I've got a field in Cherwell that will track my ownership. So let's go out to the client tool here, and I'm going to open up an incident, and I'll change the owner on one of these guys. So I've got an assigned ticket here. Now I didn't run this one step yet, or I just added it as a blueprint and published that blueprint. So it's not going to have Sherry's data in here yet. But if I change to a different owner, let's say Andrew, and save that, now I've got a little one step that I created. Oh, Andrew's out of the office. So let's go into our client tool now and take a look at how that might work for the field that gets concatenated. I'm going to go and search for all my existing incidents. I'm going to go find one that's not closed here, and I'm going to make an assignment. Now I just applied this blueprint, so the existing owner of this ticket, Claire, is not going to be written to my hidden field yet. I'm going to have to actually make a change to that owner field, and that will then write to that field. So let me pick Henry here. I'll save the ticket. And now I've created a little one step in the background that is just going to pop a pop-up and show me the data that's in that field. So now I'm going to jump into the client tool and take a look at that filling of the initial owner field. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at an existing incident. So let's look at this first one for Molly. So this one is assigned to Andrew. Now this ticket existed before I applied this blueprint, so that data is not going to be in that field. I created a little one step here that just does a pop-up that should show me that data. So it's going to that hidden initial owner field that I have or had added with the blueprint, and there's no data in that one. But if I gen a new ticket now, just fill out a little data here. Now again, I'm assuming that the owner field is required because I have this set for first save. So I'm going to fill out the owner field here, and I'll pick Claire, save that ticket, and now if I run that one step, there's her data. So that did track the initial owner. And again, this one is only set to run on first save, so it's going to capture that initial owner, but then not run after that. If you wanted to capture the progression of all the owners, you would use that other instant action, which captures all the owners and concatenates them to a hidden field upon change of the owner field. So that's an easy way to track initial ownership of tickets in Cherwell.